have your second last obstacle to lunch. So bear with me while being an obstacle to lunch, talking a bit about AI and how to scale this. Because we had this excellent panel, thank you, thank you, people before. While, AI sounds so easy, is it easy? What do you think? I think it's not easy. So people who think it's not easy, please raise your hands. Okay, so most. Okay, so we're in good company. Now let me talk a bit about our sweat, blood and tears that we had over the past years. Because if you look at what happened, was there any AI before 22? No, there was not really, right? AI was restricted essentially to university, institutes, and so on. And then came ChatGPT and everybody went, oh, what happened? Then in 24 you had AI galore, and then now in 25, where are we? And the first people already talk about AI winter next year. That is what I would refer to as a hype. If you want to make pictures, please do. If you want to have the original, simply drop me a note, Dorian at Spirit, it's easy, then you get the full picture. So what is up next? Up next is this. That the first people now already talk about what inevitably happens in every hype. Between what looks easy at the beginning is maybe not that easy in the end. And the first people start to talk about the bubble being burst, maybe have followed the NVIDIA stock market valuation, be a bit wobbly. So what happens here? What's the bigger picture to this? My view is this. Anyone of you familiar with that type of graph? I'm sure you have seen it. It's the Gartner hype cycle. Right? Everybody loves that stuff. It goes from nowhere to hype, then goes to the valley of disillusionment, and then comes up to the plateau of productivity. Now, I have been a privileged boy. I've been 3 times lucky to be at present at these tectonic shifts. In 2000, when the internet came, that was the same thing. Anyone from UBS here? So here's the point. Back in 95, we built literally at the Institute in St. Gallen the first UBS webpage. We showed it to the, at the time, C-level of UBS. Do you know what UBS responses was when you showed them the webpage and told them you will need a website? Some people laugh, so you guys know what's coming, right? They said essentially we don't need a website. Money is trust. People will come to our branch offices. How did that story end, right? In about 2015, I received a letter from UBS, and since in St. Gallen, everyone in St. Gallen knows that, they had a campus branch, so you're kind of like an easy prey and you're then a lifelong customer. And in about 2015, I received a letter from them. If you don't do e-banking, we're going to punish you with extra fees. Okay? All of you who are customers with them or other e-banking operators know about the same story. Now, what happened here? Yes, indeed, there was a hype around 2000. It burst eloquently well in about 2001. There was the same with e-commerce. Who went through the e-commerce stuff, right? 2008-9, everything e-commerce. But if you look a bit deeper, my view is, here's where the actual thing is. What you see here in orange is the actual adoption curve. The actual adoption curve, and I talk here specifically about enterprises. Yes, OpenAI has whatever 100 million active users a week or so, but these are predominantly consumer users. Why is that then there is such a lag in the enterprise? Because it's something more complex. And by the way, for everyone here investing, you know where the most interesting point is to invest, not at the peak of the bubble, but what's coming maybe next year, the year after, where adoption is already above the valley of disillusionment. That's the interesting point. Because there actually the change happens where you start to see shifts across the globe in terms of enterprise adoption. Now let's look what an enterprise adoption then needs. To get into the enterprise, these are 5 bullets. There is much more than that, but only have 15 minutes and 10 will be gone, so I need to speed up. It starts from left to right? The CISO needs compliance, right? And anyone who has been in enterprise adoption of, say, OpenAI or so, or Anthropic or so, good luck with that. Have you picked up what happened to Anthropic? They published actually a blog post over the weekend, the first massive scale AI cyber attack, where they abused, or better say, trying to misuse Claude code. That should be a wake-up call for any CISO. this stuff needs to be done securely, otherwise you essentially put yourself at risk. It needs legacy integration. No company has simply an API stack where you click, 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 and all is done. That's simply not the case. And even the ones that have just started 2 or 3 years ago have by now multiple of those API stacks that don't necessarily talk to each other. Then comes the CEO. The CEO, like me, I want to see a bang for my buck. Right? I want to see a return on what I invest. Who of you has seen great AI cases where there is a provable value add? I have seen a few, right? So a couple of people in the room have seen a few. Is that all the others haven't seen anything? Then you need to speak who rose their hands. There is a 10x here, but it's a bit more difficult to get to than one initially thinks. It needs a robust accuracy at scale architecture. I've been, you know that maybe people in Switzerland, we've been operating with 20 years in Surge with local.ch. It's way more tough to create accuracy with millions of documents than just what is normally done in a pilot with a couple of hundred documents. But in a really robust enterprise level environment, that is what matters. And then last but not least, right, you also want to have some people using that stuff. It's of no use if you have a board level presentation and half a year later one asks, so actually who is using that day to day? Nobody's doing that. So what to do about that? Here are a couple of things. These are simple pointers that we had the privilege to work through with the European Central Bank, customer of ours, some other regulators too, which kind of like causes a lot of my gray hair, because as you imagine, the regulator at that scale, where you literally see everything in terms of what the bank has as documents, and they only have trust. That's the only currency of a central bank. So these guys are ultra tough when it comes to any new technology. So here are a couple of pointers for your own work if you start to adopt this. The element that is at the very top, my view, is security. And that is not just security into the app, but also security within such an AI application. Who is allowed, that's the next one, permission enabled. Who is allowed to see what? How do you control what to see what? And by the way, some folks in that drag space that I operate in say, yeah, I do document level security. Side note, whoever tells you they do document level permission control implicitly say they have document leakage. Why? Because in the vectorized space you have those chunks. If you don't control permission level on the chunk level permission control, you have document leakage, which is unacceptable not just for banks but for everyone else that has any security in place. And that's tough to get. Permission level document chunk permission control is tough to get. Where you go then also to the actual production level scope. A pilot with a couple of hundred documents is easy. And the moment you go to millions of documents, the tough thing is this, right? Go to folks who know how to operate an index for more than 12 months. Who know how to operate a vectorized index for more than 12 months. Why do I say that? Because it's such a steep learning curve. And I tell you that from experience and my gray hair. It's such a steep learning curve because you need to kind of like not only master the size of the deployment, but you need to, as an example, master the update cycles of the deployment. If you have, as an example, a high velocity data set where you need to update this. And you literally, if you don't know what you do, run into physical hardware limits. Next to the fact that the whole thing isn't cheap, right? I had this morning a talk with a customer of ours in Asia. Their thought was, oh, we expose everything to our standard OpenAI stuff. Matter of fact, with their about 70,000 cases they want to process a month in that particular domain, there will be a cost of about $4.5 million just for the tokens per annum, which kills any business case. So there is lots of optimization that you need to do. And given that the dawn will come very soon, I want to go very quickly on that, which makes entire application stack a bit more complex than what was initially thought about. I remember those days 25 years ago, right, when everybody said to come back to UBS, oh, you know, we know how to build a content management system. And we said, please don't. Multilingual content rendering is a bit more complex than you think, right? And it's the same here. And the thing is, if you go and build content management systems, that's a very deterministic task. if you want to master anything like this, where you essentially need to combine both the probabilistic world of the retrieval side, the probabilistic world of the LLM side, but you need to have straight, clear answers, that is deterministic answers, because otherwise you cannot guarantee accuracy at scale continuously. It is an orchestration task that awaits you. So there again, the suggestion, go to folks who have done that time and time again. That shortcuts the valley of delusionment if things don't work out. Because behind, and that's maybe the last point before the gong comes, is an exquisite element of where you need to optimize. The super short version goes like that. CPU compute is about 10x cheaper than GPU compute. I just talked about that case in Southeast Asia I was speaking this morning about. GPU compute with 4.5 million token cost is simply way too much expensive for that particular business case. But what did the guys want to do? They essentially wanted to feed tons of documents where they wanted to just one little excerpt where that document talks about a specific situation, where you could do that way easier by doing a CPU, a traditional machine learning element, which comes at a fraction of the cost of the GPU compute. So what you also need to think, especially if you go at large-scale enterprise deployments, how do you optimize that across the different classes of compute? Because otherwise, again, you will not have a happy CFO talking to you. And yes, indeed, makes it at the end, as always, a bit more complex than one thought and things. We had the privilege to do that, as I said, with the European Central Bank. I'm super grateful to them, because where do you get a customer that is so absolutely focused on security, on scale, on accuracy, like a central bank, a regulator, to learn all of that over the last 2 years. Time's too short. I'll be around, happy to talk with you about that. We also want to come now to a close and give you a couple of elements that we have seen working. Number one, the bubble is also a good filter. I'll be the first one to cheer if we're all successful in this room here. There is so much great technology out of Switzerland, but also will be one that will cheer when some of the bubble will burst and one gets down to what actually we do best, solid, good engineering. Because at the end, AI is just yet another optimization play. If you take a step back, what you can do with an enterprise setup is about optimization. And optimization is about continuity. Don't buy it from me, go and read the Toyota books, how they made the world's greatest car company. The second one is scale is essentially a C-suite element. Why? As a company, you will need to make choices. If you do that piecewise element in this group, in that group, in this section, in this department, you essentially will have a zoo of fleas that to coordinate is difficult and be expensive. And this is one of those technologies, by the way, they're not too different like introducing email. Email is for the whole company, not just for this department. That needs to have a C-level attention and the C-level direction, what to do. And the last one is about orchestration. What I tried to show in those slides before is all about that you need to know how to get from data to real outcomes. And that's the tough stuff, right? To take a bit of data for a pilot is easy, but to continuously take data, transform them in a couple of steps, and do real outcomes, that is better supervision or take the customer service level to a new level or be much more responsive in a sales situation, their consistency pays. And the other side of that same coin is, my view, orchestration. With that, I come to an end. We also prepared a couple of documents. Follow us. We have all of that white paper. My team does a great job in making that available to you as an audience. Thank you very much. I wish us now a good and happy afternoon.